Hi, I'm Melanie Potock. I am a speech-language pathologist, and I am also the author of Happy Mealtimes with Happy Kids, How to Teach Your Child About the Joy of Food. What I love to do more than anything is work with families on how to help their child be a more adventurous eater. I wrote Happy Mealtimes specifically for all parents, although I'm a feeding therapist and I work with children who may have severe medical issues or may have autism or some sensory processing difficulties. What I came to realize is that all parents are missing some of the basic knowledge. For example, how to correctly position a child in a high chair, which spoon to use, all these different cups over at various grocery stores. Which one do I grab and why and at what age? So Happy Mealtimes addresses some of those topics, and one of the things that I love the most is our new children's CD, Dancing in the Kitchen. And it's all songs that celebrate the joy of food. One of the things that I try to encourage parents is to keep mealtimes as joyful as possible. And inside the CD packaging are tips from me on how to celebrate every single step, how to have family mealtimes that are stress-free, and just enjoy being together, because that's what family dinner time is really all about. Learning to eat the food is just a process to getting there. Let's talk a little bit about sensory integration and sensory processing and the ability to take in information, decide what's important, what we should act on, and what we should ignore. That always comes into play when we're trying new foods. One of the things that I always do when I meet new parents is I read them this quote from Dr. Jean Ayres that so beautifully describes when we're exploring a new food, all the information that comes into our body. Sensory integration puts it all together. Imagine peeling and eating an orange. You sense the orange through your eyes, your nose, your mouth, the skin on your hands and your fingers, and also the muscles and joints inside your fingers, your hands, your arms, and your mouth. All the sensations from the orange and all the sensations from your hands and fingers somehow come together in one place in your brain, which allows you to make decisions on how to peel and eat the orange. Whenever I read parents that quote, they realize there's a lot more to eating than just putting something in your mouth, chewing and swallowing. One of the things that we talk the most about is that children are young explorers. They need to experience food with their whole body, not just right into their mouth. You and I can do that now because we had the opportunity when we were younger to explore food, to play in food, to understand the texture and the temperature of food before we ever took a bite. Sometimes we get so caught up in keeping our kids clean and not letting them get messy, especially in restaurants or in public places, or maybe because we just got a brand new carpet. But it's really, really important for kids to get messy, so I always encourage parents to try to let kids explore food with their whole bodies as much as possible, even if it means plopping a bunch of pudding in the bathtub and having a pudding bath that night. You can always just hose them off afterwards. One of the families that wrote a beautiful letter for my book, Happy Mealtimes, finished up with just a few sentences. And this mom said, "My little girl still rolls and mashes occasionally, but today the body paint is a thing of the past. This little girl needed to take her yogurt and rub it all over her body and her arms to try to figure out what was really happening with this yogurt before she could ever take that finger dipped in yogurt and put it in her mouth. But once we allowed her to experience the food that way, she eventually stopped all the rolling and mashing and the body painting and started to eat, and most importantly stopped gagging. And it became a much more enjoyable experience." So this mom went on to say, "As parents, we no longer feel the constant frustration. Instead, we try to provide the positive eating environment she needs to feel confident and enjoy food. We have all come a long way." So let's take a minute and talk about oral motor skills. A 6-month-old baby is typically when we would start pureed foods, maybe a little bit of rice cereal, depending on what your pediatrician recommends. So always check with your pediatrician and design a meal plan specifically for your child and your family's cultural needs, as well as any food allergies that may be running in the family, any dietary restrictions. Once you have that figured out, you're going to start out with, most people start with a coated spoon. And I love these spoons. You can pick them up anywhere. They have this nice coated tip. It's a nice small spoon for a little tiny mouse, and it's perfect for parents presenting the food. But when you present the food, remember to start with a tiny, tiny taste for two reasons. First of all, this is the child's first experience. We don't want to throw too much at them. But also, babies from about 4 months to 6 months of age have a tiny little, almost a tongue thrust or a suckling pattern where their tongue goes in and out, in and out. That's what we need for breast and bottle feeding. The reason why we start purees at 4 to 6 months isn't just because what's best for their tummy, but because it's what their mouth can handle as that suckle reflex is integrated. So your baby may at first start to push the food out. You may decide to wait for another few weeks and see if that reflex isn't a little bit more integrated, a little bit more adaptable. But don't be surprised if you see a little bit of that at first. But here's one way to help your baby start to develop a more mature swallow. If this is your baby's tongue, and this is the spoon being presented, you want to wait for your baby to open his mouth, bring in the spoon, and gently press on the baby's tongue. Wait for the top lip to come down, and then remove the spoon parallel to the floor. What you don't want to do, frankly, is what I did with my kids before I ever became a feeding therapist, is the tilt and scrape method. Here's your tongue. Here's mommy presenting the spoon. Come in, lips closed, tilt, and scrape on the roof of your mouth. The reason why you don't want to do that is it promotes a tongue thrusting pattern. We're trying to help the child get a more mature pattern. When a child has puree on the roof of their mouth because you just deposited it there with the tip of your spoon, it's like having peanut butter on the top of your mouth. And the first thing they're going to do is take their tongue and try to get rid of it. And now you're encouraging that suckle pattern or a tongue thrusting pattern. A couple other things I want to tell you about spoons. Love this one for starting out with little kids. There's also some flexible versions. You just want to make sure that there's a nice flat bowl because that's going to encourage the top lip to come down and completely clean off that spoon. And remember, you're just dipping the tip and then you're slowly working up to more on the bowl. For little hands, there's fun ones as they start to do more self-feeding, which is a very messy process but essential. There's fun ones that have trucks. We all love those. There are bent spoons so that when the child scoops and picks up and has a slight rotation in their wrist, the spoon is presented directly into their mouth. This one just happens to have a spoon at both ends, so it's kind of fun. Works any way you pick it up. But one of the best spoons that I love to start kids with is a little dipper. They're a little bit hard to find right now. You can get them on the internet. You can sometimes find them at big box stores or discount stores. As you can see, it's just a dipping tool with a very short handle and a lip lock, so it can't go in too far. The great thing about a dipper is you simply dip. There's no scooping, which is a more complicated motor pattern. You can do the same thing by using a piece of food that is about this width, perhaps a Zwieback toast, and the child holds onto it, learns to dip, put it in his mouth, and suck it off, so that they're practicing this motor pattern. Once you get that down, you can progress to a short-handled spoon, so when their little fist goes to close on it, there's very little room from this knuckle to the end of the spoon. When you have a long spoon, and little kids go to grab it right here, you're looking for a poke in the eye. So a short-handled spoon, especially one that's fatter, is going to provide the child more surface to go down and start to scoop. They're going to start with a little dip and they're going to learn to scoop. So just some ideas about spoons and the different stages of spoons. If you're in feeding therapy, your therapist probably has some special spoons for you to use. If you're just got a little kiddo at home that you're working on purees, you can learn more about spoons in my book, Happy Mealtimes, but I hope this little bit has helped you too. So real quickly, let's just talk about cups. I love to transition a child to an open cup and a straw cup as quickly as possible. You'll know your child is ready to do that when the suckle pattern that we just spoke of has integrated and they're beginning to use a more mature pattern. You're going to see that when you're feeding them purees because you won't see as much spillage at the corner of their mouths. The reason why I love a straw cup is it builds up your orbicularis oris, which is your puckering muscle, your kissing muscle. And I like to start with just your basic toss-away cup. You want to fill it all the way to the top so that when the child is learning with the straw how to suck from the cup, there's only maybe a half an inch or so to actually suck the liquid, or what I actually prefer is puree, through the straw. When you start out with a puree filled all the way to the top, it's a much easier food for kids to learn to swallow. They're already doing it with the spoon. It doesn't spread the way a thin liquid does. It stays in the center of their tongue. And again, if this is their tongue and here's their straw, when you help them with this cup, you don't want the straw to go way in. You want the tip of their tongue to have room after they've been drinking to complete the swallow when the cup's removed by lifting up and swallowing with the tip on the bumpy ridges, the alveolar ridge behind your teeth. So if I can turn to the side, it looks more like this instead of, that's my professional example. So in Happy Mealtimes, we talk a lot about the importance of drinking from straw. Some of the other things that you can do is these wonderful thermos cups that have the flexible straw. I love kids to drink these backwards. So rather than putting your chin here, which will promote more of a jaw protrusion, which is also going to contribute to that suckle pattern, I like kids to drink from it this way because you automatically have support for your chin and start to use this muscle, which you need to build up in order to get a more advanced swallow. One of the things that parents often chat with me about when they're all done with feeding therapy, or whether I've offered a few ideas around how their children can be a more adventurous eater, is once you get started, where do you go from there? When the child's in elementary school, middle school, high school, how do you continue on this path of trying new foods and being willing to be a more adventurous eater? The main point I like every family to take home with them is it's all about keeping it joyful and keeping it fun. When you gather around the family dinner table, remember it's about family. It really isn't about how many bites of broccoli Johnny took that night. Try to keep every experience around the family dinner table as positive as possible. That's how you're going to get there, to being a more adventurous eater and trying so many different types of food. That's what leads to good nutrition, healthy bodies, and a wonderful time together in your home with your family.